Howdy Pilgrims, PappyStu here. How y'all doing today? Okay, welcome to part 4 of Archery 101. And today we're going to talk about aiming. Because if you don't aim, you can't hit what you're shooting at. Before you buy that first bow is eye dominance. You have to determine which eye you are dominant with. And not always are people right eye dominant because they're right-handed, or left eye dominant because they're left-handed. So you have to find out which side you are eye dominant on, and you should buy a bow to shoot from that side that you're dominant on, regardless if you're left or right. So in order to determine whether you're right or left eye dominant, you take your two hands, put them together like so, forming a triangle between your two hands, and pick a spot out on the horizon, either a doorknob or a target bale, bullseye, what have you. Put your hands together in that triangle form that I told you about, and then looking at that, whatever that target is, close your left eye. And if you can still see that doorknob or that target, then you're right eye dominant. If you close your right eye and you could no longer see it and you have to move to the left to see it, then you are left eye dominant. Okay, so make sure you do that test before you buy your bow, and make sure that you buy a right-handed or a left-handed bow based on which side you are eye dominant, because it's really hard, almost virtually impossible for you to change your eye dominance. You should shoot around your dominant eye. Let's talk about aiming now. There are two basic techniques to aiming. It's that simple. Each one has their pros and cons. One is a lot simpler in technique, yet much more difficult to accomplish proficiently in form, and that's called instinctive shooting. Most of your traditional shooters use an instinctive shooting technique because it lends itself to the tackle, longbows, recurves, stick bows. And basically what we talk about when we talk about instinctive shooting is really simple and straightforward. First of all, here's our arrow. As you can see, the arrow is formed of a shaft, a tip, which can be any number of kinds of tips. I mean, you can have a field point like this. You can have broadheads, which are used for hunting. All different kinds of broadheads. Judo points for small game. So anyhow, but when you practice, you use a field point. Looks like so, and you want to always make sure that all your arrows are matched in weight and configuration, because your consistent shooting will come from consistent form and a perfectly identical arrow. Same weight of grain, same tip, same fletching design, same nock, same cock fletching orientation. Everything needs to be identical. Your form needs to be identical. Your arrows need to be identical. Anyhow, but, okay, we're going to talk about instinctive shooting. Instinctive shooters don't really judge yardage along the same lines as a sight type shooter, and those are the two types. You got instinctive shooting and you've got sights, or sight shooting, using sights to shoot. Okay, an instinctive shooter, what he does is he aligns the tip of the arrow in respect to the target. He learns at a specific given distance where the arrow will hit in relation between the tip of the arrow and the target. And remember, always with either one of these types of shooting, aim small, miss small. You want to pick a point, a very small point, and make that the center of your target window, your aiming window. So an instinctive shooter will reference the tip of his arrow at full draw on his bow to a certain place. I got to be careful, I'm hitting the roof here. Don't want to release this arrow into the camera. Now, as the yardage increases, he practices at, say, 20 yards with the reference of the tip of his arrow to the target, and he shoots that consistently, time and time and time and time again, and gets used to it at different angles and dangles until he's absolutely sure of where he references the tip of his arrow in relation to the target. Then, as he shoots at longer and longer distances, he changes the reference or the orientation of the broadhead or field point on the tip of his arrow in relation to the target accordingly. In other words, if the distance is another 20 yards, he'll lift the tip of the arrow a sufficient amount to compensate for the change in the distance of the yardage. He doesn't really pay any attention. He makes an estimate of yardage as a reference in his mind's eye rather than as a function of the yardage. But he changes the tip of his arrow in relation to the target in accordance with the distance it is from him. And that's about as best as I can explain instinctive shooting. Okay, the advantage to instinctive shooting are, one, it's much quicker than using sights. A person can draw and release almost instantaneously with instinctive shooting. So it lends itself in particular to hunting, in particular with recurves or longbows, traditional type bows, and gives a hunter an opportunity to loose arrows at targets in a much quicker fashion in opportunities that are good opportunities but very short-lived. Whereas a hunter with a bow and arrow using sights has to draw the bow, aim, and then release the arrow to its target, which takes a significant more amount of time. Instinctive shooting is also almost specifically used only for bow fishing, and even hunters who use sights generally use instinctive type aiming practices for bow fishing. Disadvantages: it's a much harder technique to master. It takes quite a bit more time. It takes a lot more practice, and some people just are better at acquiring the skill, while others may or may not be able to ever really be very efficient with that skill technique. So those are a few of the pros and cons of instinctive shooting over sight shooting. I might have to break this down into two videos: instinctive shooting and sight shooting. Okay, in your shooting, it all takes practice. It's all up here. It's in your head. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you helped everyone out. PappyStu said it, and I am out and on the side.